Welcome in. It is Big Ten today. It is great to have you with us on this Thursday. Dave Revson, Andy Katz, back from Mackey Arena. Your ears still ringing?
You know, I've been to Mackey Arena a lot of times, been to Cameron, Fog Allen. There is no question. There was a point last night where that was one of the loudest college basketball arenas I've ever heard. I got up to try to listen to Chris Collins' huddle. I was like in the huddle. My head was in there. I couldn't hear a thing. I don't know how the players heard Chris or Taylor Battle or Brian James, and they were right next to him. It was unbelievably loud.
It was
in a good way.
It was a fabulous game as well, and back and forth and everything you could want in a big-time college basketball game. That one is our big story, a wild game. Northwestern had a chance to win it in regulation. Boo Buie has a chance here. Now, does he get bumped out top? It's certainly up for debate. He misses the floater there, so it heads to overtime. Purdue taking over in the OT. They did not miss from the field. A perfect 6 of 6. Zach Edey hitting 4 of them. Massive foul disparity in the game. Chris Collins expressed his displeasure at the end. Got thrown out. A 105-96 Boilermaker win.
It's a heck of a game. It's a game that you probably don't want to coach. You know, you want to watch, but man, Northwestern's great. Chris has done an unbelievable job. You know, all their guys, they got great guards. Their big guys battle like hell. I know that's a difficult chore, but man, I got a lot of respect for Chris Collins and Northwestern and what they've been able to do. Man, they're tough, they're resilient, but I like our group, man. Like, nobody's trying to miss a free throw, right? So, but we stayed with it and somehow found a way. So proud of our guys for finding a way.
They're just a tough shot-making team. I felt like there was a lot of possessions where we had pretty good defensive possession. We got a good contest. We got the shot we wanted, and they just were making them. Kind of when that happens, you got to tip your cap, say like good shot, and move on. They're a tough team. I mean, they're a really, really good team. When you can shoot the ball like that and catch them on a hot night, it's gonna be tough to beat them. But I'm proud of our guys that we did. We did a really good job wearing their team out with foul trouble in regulation, and then they had kind of those tough matchups. It's not what they wanted to do, obviously, but they had to do it. It's kind of how we play. We get teams in foul trouble. We attack the rim hard. We get rebounds. We do all those things, and we get teams in foul trouble. So overtime, they're forced to go to some matchups they maybe don't want to, and we were able to exploit that.
That's how the game's called. I mean, and you got to live with it. I mean, that's why I was so proud of my guys. I mean, if you're down 50 at the free throw line and you have a shot at the buzzer, so I mean, you almost have to play perfect. You know, and so our guys showed a lot of poise. Obviously, this is not many people come in here and win, and there's a reason for that because they have great teams, and this crowd is awesome and such a fun environment to play in. And you know, it's disappointing because you know, we had our chances, we just couldn't close the deal.
All right, slight exaggeration from Chris Collins. They weren't down 50 at the free throw line. The free throw attempt disparity was 46-8. The largest disparity in any Big Ten game in at least the last 25 years. We'll get to that in a bit. But let's first celebrate what an amazing game it was. We had fabulous performances. Let's start with Purdue. Braden Smith, 16 assists, a remarkable performance for him. It was tied for the most in the Big Ten over the last 15 years. Zach Edey was fabulous once again. And then Lance Jones, to me, was the difference in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Jones hit big-time shots, which is what he was brought in for to do from Southern Illinois. You know, on one of those assists from Braden Smith late, he found Fletcher Lawyer, who got open, and he hit a big shot. Like, they made timely shots to win this basketball game. You know, they did make some mistakes. I mean, their turnovers at times were costly. Their free throws, even though they had the advantage, they were 29 of 46.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have won this game without some of the drama. Zach Edey was usually much more efficient. I mean, he was 8 of 17. And I think in some of those highlights you just saw late in the game, the fact that Northwestern was down to 3 fouls left of their bigs, you know, at Welsh Ryan, it was 14 of 15 of the 3 guys. At one point late, it was 12 of 15. They were down to 1 player left with 3 fouls to give. And you could see, like, they were playing off of them because they just didn't want to pick up that 4th or 5th foul. So all those factors played in, and just like Zach Edey said, by the way, his basketball IQ and the way to express it is off the charts.
Right.
I mean, he broke it down. He could be sitting on our set here because he's right. The way they wear them down, they were in matchups they didn't want to be in, and Purdue exploited them. On the Purdue side, this is another great example of why I think they're a better team. They handle situations. They're a little more resilient. I think they're tougher. All their key guys have gotten better from last year, and this will help them. Even if they lost that game, if Boo's shot goes down, I think they're a better basketball team dealing with this, even with a home loss, than they were a year ago. So I think there's a lot of positives for them and for Northwestern.
All right, well, let's get to the Northwestern part of it. And by the way, I mean, Purdue, like 20 wins, first team in America to get to 20 wins. Zach Edey, Tice, Terry Dissinger for the most double-doubles in school history, passes Rick Mount for the most consecutive double-figure games. So, I mean, a lot of milestones there for Purdue. Let's get to the Northwestern side, and we'll get to the fouls in a second, but just kind of big picture, the way that they have played Purdue. I mean, second straight game that goes into overtime. They had beaten them the previous two. As you outlined, I mean, this was a supercharged atmosphere. You think Purdue had this game circled on its schedule after the way Northwestern had beaten them and court rushed them the last two games. But, man, Northwestern, I mean, offensively, they can really get it going.
Yeah, look, Dave, I'm a long-suffering Red Sox fan prior to 2004. Okay, they were obviously like the Cubs, you know, that in all of sports. And I get now being here for 6 years, friends and family, I get the Northwestern sky is falling. But I think we have to change that narrative. This is a different team. I know they went last year, but you heard what Matt Painter said. I don't think he hands out those, you know, platitudes lightly. There is great respect in this league for this Northwestern team. No question. Players, coaches, they are tougher. Offensively, they can score with anyone. The fact that they're scoring 96 points.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought Robbie and, you know, and Kevin were talking on the broadcast with us about how they couldn't be in a game in the 50s and 60s against Purdue. They had to score better than Purdue, and for a lot of stretches they were. So the fact that Ty Berry was carrying them early, making big shots before Boo Buie got going. Brooks Barnheiser obviously is playing at a higher level. I know they did not get, this is a bad matchup for them in the post, but prior to this game, Matt Nicholson has improved dramatically, getting, you know, 10, 12 points on just those dump downs. And, you know, that's who they are. And Martinelli, I got to say Martinelli.
Yeah.
He makes contributions.
Right.
Weird shot. He's like, puts the hand on top of it, goes in, and a little, you know, little hook shot. But he made major contributions. Their post is their post. You know, it's kind of like, to some extent, Michigan State. I mean, they're not going to get much out of it. They just got to hold the fort down. And they are effective in every way. I really believe that in the right bracket, they have the talent, they have the offense, and they have the guard to win multiple games in the NCAA tournament.
You talk about them offensively. I mentioned this last night on the big show, but in case people missed it, they are the first team to score 95 or more points, shoot 55% or better, have 20 or more assists, and fewer than 10 turnovers, and lose a game in college basketball in the last 25 years. Teams had been 763 and 0.
Did you research that?
763 and 0 when doing that. Now, it's fair to point out, Purdue did all of those things too, other than the turnovers. They had exactly 10 turnovers. So you had two teams that were great offensively. We have to talk about the foul situation and the free throws, 46-8. Now, I think it's fair to point out, Chris Collins told you before the game, we have 15 fouls in our bigs, and we intend to use all of them. I mean, this is part of Northwestern's strategy.
Against Zach Edey.
Against Zach Edey. Yeah. If you look at free throw rate, Northwestern is in the bottom 30 in the country in terms of the percentage of the time they get to the line as opposed to the percentage of field goal attempts they take. And they're in the bottom 30 in terms of how often their opponents get there. They have the worst free throw differential in the Big Ten. So in some ways, some of this was in character. When they played at Evanston, Purdue shot 41 free throws. They shot 46 here. It's basically a wash. I mean, they had a bunch of technical foul free throws at the end, so it's basically a wash. The difference is Northwestern shot 32 in Evanston. They shoot 8 in West Lafayette. I think what probably got to Chris Collins was not the fouls that were called on Northwestern, but what he would believe were fouls that weren't called on Purdue. Correct.
And I would also point out the way they play now, they don't draw, I mean, just you've got the numbers, but also they don't draw them because Boo hits a lot of floaters.
But again, 32 in Evanston.
No, I know, but I'm saying.
Right, same matchup.
In general.
Right, agreed.
He doesn't draw the contact as much because he's perfected that floater. He gets it off before the contact. They're shooting threes better, and they don't pound the ball in the post. So add all those things up. In general, they're not going to go to the free throw line as much as other teams.
Right.
But in this case, I think part of the problem were there were a couple calls, and I was sitting right there, right in front of Chris Collins in that closed end of Mackey. The wraparound that got him, that was sort of the final straw.
The coup de grace, yes.
Yeah, from Lance Jones. The frustration, and this is something that might be dissected in the offseason. It's not going to change now. But obviously there's a lot of frustration on how to defend Zach Edey. It used to be, and I reported on this a year ago and previous, Zach Edey was ticked off, and so was Purdue, that he was getting beat up and not getting calls. Kneed in the back, pushed, scratched. I mean, he had the marks.
Right.
And be like, hey, I'm not getting to the free throw line. It has shifted.
He has shot more free throws than anyone in America.
Correct.
Yes.
So now the narrative has now gone the other way.
Right.
And you see in some of these plays where the Northwestern bigs are like, I'm like this, hands are up, and Zach's arm gets wrapped, and so they get called. So I think this is going to be a postseason discussion. It's
going to be a moot point because
yes,
he's not
coming back.
College basketball next year.
7'4" centers coming in.
Right.
So I think all of that was accumulative for Chris to be so upset, on the disparity.
Right. I would argue I don't think it was about the fouls called on Zach Edey. I think like that last play where Boo Buie drives, he gets bumped, right? Should that be a foul? I think if you call a foul, honestly, I think you get pilloried there for calling it.
And again, that was right there.
Right, but I'm just saying, I don't know whether you can call that. But again, if you've called the game how you've called it on the other end, it's hard. Officiating's hard. Let's just say it's hard.
Oh, I know.
Ty
I'm
Berry,
just saying those calls were all in front of Chris.
Right. The Ty Berry three in overtime where he clearly gets bumped on the way down. I mean, it's a difficult job. Hey,
you have to put a bow and just say, unbelievable game.
Unbeliable game.
Great series.
Right.
If we see it again in Minneapolis, great.
Let's really quickly get a thought on Penn State's win.
Look, Mike Rhodes gets his first true road win as head coach of Penn State. They're actually calling the Palestra game a home game. They've done that the last 2 years. So even though it wasn't neutral. That's a Penn State home game.
First win outside the state of Pennsylvania.
True. And to do it without Kanye Cleary.
Yeah.
I thought was tremendous. This is great momentum for them. And now it comes to who's going to not play on Wednesday night in the Big Ten tournament. They're in contention not to, which I think is a stepping stone for them. And they could be troubled down the stretch. No question. I got to address one thing on Rutgers. I mean, I know there's some. Bottom line is this. No team in the Big Ten was hurt more by the exodus of the transfer portal. Late. Cam Spencer obviously gets a deal to go to UConn, in the NIL world. That hurt. But Paul Mulcahy, they did not expect that. And he goes to Washington. And they didn't have replacements.
Right.
Now they do. They got the best recruiting class in the Big Ten and top 3 in the country.
It'll be dramatically better next year when 2 of the top 3 freshmen in the country
Yes.
are wearing a Scarlet Knight uniform. Andy will rejoin us in a bit. He's kind enough to join us for today's big interview. And Kelsey, we'll get to you and your career in a moment because obviously it's been absolutely fascinating. But I just want to get a sense from you, what were you thinking last night as you saw Caitlin pass you on the all-time list?
Well, thanks for having me, Big Ten. I think, honestly, I wasn't surprised. I know how great she is. I know how amazing she is. And I know the work she's put in to kind of be where she is. And scoring a lot of points like that is tough. I know a little bit from experience, but at the level she's playing, it's an amazing accomplishment. I'm proud of her.
Northwestern sold out that game last night, and that's the first time they'd ever sold out a women's game in the history of the program. The get-in price at Evanston was about $250. I mean, you just think about the effect that Caitlin has had. Give me a sense of what this has meant, in your opinion, kind of more broadly for women's basketball.
I think it's a great opportunity for her to be a pillar of what our game is, going to be, and where it's going. She's a phenomenal person, on the court, and I think she's paving a way for, the future generations behind us. And she's actually putting on notice what the game could be for a lot of people if they just allow it. So it's a good thing to see.
It is indeed. What stands out to you the most about her game?
She can shoot the ball, man. She can shoot that ball, and I think consciously, like, she has no conscience, and I think that's the best part about it. She's playing based on what she sees, and she's comfortable, and I think it's a really good thing to have at this level, in the game. Like, you can be able to shoot the ball from anywhere on the floor, and that's rare to find. So she has something rare in her.
I want to catch up on your career. As I mentioned, obviously a brilliant, brilliant player at Ohio State. We saw the numbers up until last night. Second all-time leading scorer in the history of the sport, the all-time leading scorer in the Big Ten before last night. So you're playing for the Indiana Fever. You were a WNBA All-Star for the first time this year. What did that mean to you?
Oh, man, it was one of those things where after a while, the accomplishments were always what they were and what they always will be for me. But I think personally it was it's something that any great player wants to mark up their list if they're playing against the best, 143 players in the world. And to have that accomplishment now on my belt, I'm grateful for it. But I think there's a lot of more work to be done, and I'm going to be able to do it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the work for your team. It has been a struggle for the Fever of late. Certainly, we're well aware of that, people who follow the WNBA. And yet it felt like last year there was a lot of progress being made. You got another really good player on the roster in Aaliyah Boston. Kind of catch us up on where the Fever is and the progress you feel like this team is making.
I think we made a lot of great strides, especially this past year, with having people like Aaliyah Boston and even Alyssa Smith, and just our young group, and Grace Berger, who's also a big team athlete who's put the game on notice. I think it gives us a chance to kind of be young and be vibrant, but also show people how fast we can play. And I think our style of play can be different going forward with the Fever.
How do you compare playing in the WNBA to playing in college?
I would say that I think that once you hit a professional role, you have to find what's good for you personally. In college, you have a routine. They kind of put you on schedule, of what you're gonna do, where you got to be. And I think as a pro, you just learn to like what's good for you and what your body needs and what your mind needs. And I think the more and more you get that experience, it helps. So I think that's the big difference.
You were telling me right now you're on your way to training, and that's part of what you're talking about there, right? Is kind of, hey, it's on you. It's on you to work on your game. Yeah. Take people through your off season. Like, what's a typical off season routine for you?
Well, my first couple years I was overseas, 6 and 7 months, and it was okay to get that experience under my belt. But after a while, it kind of got like, in a way, I didn't like how I felt being, away from my family for so many months at a time. Considering that we don't get a lot of time as a woman athlete, especially on the basketball side. So this past couple seasons, I played at Athletes Unlimited, which is a new kind of like a pro-am that they have for basketball players before the WNBA starts. So that's been something I've been doing the last 2 years to prepare myself in the off season. But I spent a lot of time with my dad at Wilberforce University. He's the head basketball coach at that HBCU, so I spent a lot of time down there, just kind of like working with him and staying sharp and getting reps with his kids and his team during the season. So I get the best of both worlds, I think.
In addition to training, you do such amazing work in the community. You won the Dawn Staley Community Leadership Award, given to the WNBA player who makes the most impact in the town in which they live and work. Tell us a little bit about the Kels Hoop Foundation and what you've done particularly for young people.
Oh, wow, man. We made a lot of strides. Our most recent success was the toy drive. It was our third annual toy drive where we go throughout the city giving toys back to different, whether it be parenthood foundations, indoor kids that just genuinely don't have a good Christmas typically. And we make it our job to make sure that they have a good Christmas. As well as we do back-to-school drives, we do turkey drives. We have Christmas parties for the kids. We kind of like an all-around book. Universal, and I think we do a good job of trying to get back to the future because we know that's what our society needs. We got to pour into them first.
Well, that is wonderful. I'm going to ask you a question about the present before I let you go, but wonderful that you're impacting the future. How much have you watched Ohio State this year? Because, we talk a lot about Caitlin Clark, and Iowa's phenomenal, and Indiana is really good as well. But, man, Ohio State is right there, including taking down Iowa. Give us a sense of what you've seen for the Buckeyes.
I think we have a flying under the radar type Buckeye team this year. I think J.C. Sheldon and those guards do a really good job of playing hard on both ends. especially when it come down in a crunch time and playing great players like Caitlin Clark. I think Ohio State responds in those moments. They did a really good job last year in the tournament as well. So I expect great things, but I always tell them when I talk to them, just keep it simple. And I think they're doing a really great job of that.
Kelsey Mitchell, a real pleasure to catch up with you. Congratulations, not just on your great work on the court, but off of it as well. Have a great workout, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Be good. I'm thrilled to have Edwina Qualls joining us now. When you were hired, as we heard in that vignette there, you became the first African-American woman to coach basketball at a Big Ten school, although there wasn't technically a Big Ten for women's athletics, obviously, at the time that happened during your tenure at UW. But do you think at the time you understood the significance of that, or was it just simply, hey, I got this job and now I'm going to do the same kind of job that I did in the high school ranks here? Was there kind of a sense of how big this was?
At the time, I would say no. The situation at Wisconsin, I felt that I was ready to go to the college ranks. I had a successful program in high school. I had also assisted at my alma mater at Southern Connecticut State College, and also didn't hurt to have Yale University listed on your resume.
I want to ask you a little bit about Bill Cofield, because it's an interesting coincidence that was the same year that Bill Cofield was hired. And we've certainly spoken a lot about him on our network. He was the first African-American men's basketball coach in the Big Ten. How much did the two of you commiserate on what was kind of a shared experience?
Actually, Bill Cofield was very positive person. You know, he believed in himself and his program. We got along. There was never any issues. Of course, we may not have had the best, practice time. Sometimes it was like 6 or 7 p.m. at nighttime. But he had mentioned to me when we first met, or when I was first introduced to him, when I came for an interview, and he was saying, well, Edwina, once my program does well, you're going to reap the benefits of it for the women's basketball team as well.
We heard a little bit in the vignette leading in about some of the really great teams you had. 1982, winning a game in the national tournament. It's still tied for the second most wins in Wisconsin history. What's your best memory of that group? I
guess, it was great to go on to play in one of the tournaments there. And I think the players really enjoyed the experience. No one really expected us to probably win the first round against Colorado. I believe they were definitely ranked higher than we were at the time, but we were able to pull the upset. Unfortunately, we had to play the University of Texas then, and they ended up being the eventual winners.
Tell me about your career after leaving Madison.
I was burnt out from basketball and probably needed a break away from it. And I looked at it as another chapter in my life where I was away from athletics completely. And unfortunately, with coaching, it consumes your life, and a lot of time, it has to be put into it to be successful. And unfortunately, at times at Wisconsin, when there were turbulent times, it really took away from the coaching aspect. It took away from your initial drive, and also it affected recruiting. So from that standpoint, I felt that I needed a break away from it, and that's what I did. And I haven't been involved in athletics, not since I left Wisconsin.
I want to leave you with this question. What are you proudest of in your career?
I think you mentioned before about how I felt or what was my the impact of being the head coach at the University of Wisconsin and being the first Black women's basketball coach. You probably should ask my sister, Jerry. She's the one that every time we're out together, if she sees somebody, the first thing she says, This is Edwina Qualls. She's the first Black women's basketball coach at the University of Wisconsin. So she's my cheerleader. But it was, to me, despite maybe some of the ups and downs at Wisconsin at times, I still would like to thank, Kit Saunders for giving me the opportunity to realize my dream to become a college coach.
Well, Edwina Qualls, it has been such a pleasure to visit with you, take this walk down memory lane with you. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on all of your accomplishments.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
January is behind us, and perhaps no team in the Big Ten is happier with that development than Ohio State. The Bucks went 1-6 in the month that was. On the offensive end, no team in the league averaged fewer points, and no team shot the three worse than OSU. Defensively, they gave up the highest three-point percentage and forced the fewest turnovers of any team in the conference. In summary, it was ugly. They started the month, or we started the month, I'd say, thinking that Ohio State was an NCAA tournament team. They do not appear to be one right now, Andy, although we'll look at their schedule in a bit. I do think there's the potential if they can figure things out here. But this is kind of the second straight year here where they have gone into a tailspin once the calendar has turned to January. What do you make of what's happened here?
Well, a couple things. Great recruiting class 2 years ago, so they're sophomores now.
Right.
And, what I was told in talking to Chris Holtman's peers in the league is they were one of the few teams on that elite level that isn't old. Yeah. Mahaffey comes from Penn State, but he's a sophomore. They go one guy that they added who's an older guy, Jamison Battle.
Right.
And Jamison Battle, has had injuries. He's battled injuries, and he hasn't been as much like a dominant presence in his career. They didn't add another veteran big guy or another veteran guard. They went with the youth. And in this league, in this current climate, where you've got 22, 23, 24-year-olds playing, it's not working.
Right.
And the young guys have hit a wall. And from what I've been talking to Ohio State, they're not defending the way as the stats show it.
Right.
There's no question Roddy Gale was in a funk. Bruce Thornton's energy has dipped with the responsibilities. They do feel good about what happened against Illinois, even though they lost the game. Offensively, they played better. They shot better. So they're hoping there's some momentum off of that. They're hoping that Royal off the bench will give them a spark and be another player that they can count on. But they're going to have to flip the script pretty quickly here, and it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not. I had their game on Saturday night against Northwestern and spent a lot of time with Chris Holtman before the game, and he was talking about exactly what you're talking about. Like chronologically, not in terms of experience, but chronologic age, they are the 11th youngest team in the country. They start four sophomores, as you outlined, and then Battle, who, as we know, has been around college basketball for quite some time. And Chris Holtman said, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to be one of the youngest teams in the league. You just can't build in the same way in college basketball now as you would in the past. It is the mantra of get old and stay old, and I think he realizes that that's something he needs to do. I would say, you still have that Alabama win. You don't really have horrible losses. There are no...
UCLA's playing better.
Yeah, there's nothing really egregious. You have 4 quad one games. If you squint really hard, you could see a way, but it just doesn't seem like it's there right now for Ohio State. So we'll see how they do going forward.
They got to go on a run.
Right. And I think it's important. One thing that Chris did say is he felt like the psyche of the team was still okay. Now, that was before Saturday when they got absolutely run out of the building against Northwestern. So is the psyche still good?
Right.
4 hours after I talked to him, I don't know. But before the game, he still felt like they were okay. So that's Ohio State, not going well in January. Let's check out a couple other teams trying to rally late. And we will start with Indiana. They had a great win the other night against Iowa. They overcame numerous injuries to win it. They have a lot of work to do to get into any kind of tourney conversation. They don't have a single quad one win. They have 4 quad one games left, 2 of them at home. But this is a team I know that you think, based on what we saw last night and based on personnel, can make a run.
Yeah, a couple key things that we don't know yet. And in reaching out to Indiana, it won't be till tomorrow, Friday, that we'll hear from Mike Woodson. So we still don't know the extent of Xavier Johnson's injury, which did not look good.
Didn't look good.
The way he landed on the wrist, he was screaming in pain, and Malik Renew, who hobbled off. That's big. So I got to temper my conversation because we don't know more Renew than Johnson because Johnson has not played as well. They can't afford to lose Renew for any extended period of time.
Right.
I think they could absorb Johnson's loss, on the court. Obviously, he's a big factor in the locker room. Khalil Weir has played great. He's one of 3 players in the Big Ten who is averaging double doubles in Big Ten games. Zach Edey and Julian Reese.
Right.
And then Mackenzie Mbako is the leading Big Ten freshman scorer in Big Ten games. Huge positives there. Their guard play just has to get better. There's no question about it. If their guard play doesn't get better, they're not going to make a run. And it was they've had many missed opportunities, namely, I know it's asking a lot, but home Purdue. Now you got to go to Purdue. You've got Wisconsin, obviously, at home. That could be a difference maker. So it's in front of them, but again, like we just said about Ohio State, they have to go on a run, not like win, lose, win. I mean,
Right.
they got to rip off like 6 in a row.
Agreed. The guard play, the Xavier Johnson thing is, first of all, it's concerning. You feel terrible for the young man because he has had a lot of injury issues throughout his career, and I just hope it's not as bad as it looked. Anthony Leal came off the bench and was great. I mean, this is a former Mr. Basketball in Indiana. This is a player who came in with some significant expectations. I mean, did they think he was going to be a superstar? I'm not sure that was the case. But you're Mr. Basketball in Indiana, like that's some heady company to be with. And you talk to people around that program, he's an unbelievable teammate. He's a guy who's in the gym every day, working at his game. There is potential there. Is he going to play like he played against Iowa every game? I mean, I think it's unrealistic to expect that you can just bottle that and have it moving forward. But can he be someone who can soften up a defense, who can shoot the 3? I mean, it's something that Indiana just doesn't do, but they did it in that Iowa game, and it made such a difference on the offensive end.
Very positive, and also they're so fortunate that game was in Bloomington because with those injuries, the way Iowa can score the basketball, if that game was on the road, it's over. I mean, they used the crowd. The crowd was great, rallied them, and willed them to a win that they desperately needed because it wasn't going well, and then you have those injuries. So that was a significant victory. I thought the way they rallied, again, Mike Woodson always talks about this, being an NBA coach, next man up and all that.
Right.
But it really did happen. The players stepped up with the opportunities. Now can they do it on the road?
And I thought the resilience, too, because remember, they had the big lead, and then Iowa came all the way back and took the lead. And there is, when you're at home in a situation like that, yes, the crowd can help you, but you can also kind of feel that tension.
Yes,
and I could feel it going through the television set, right, where people are like, oh, no, here we go. And they flipped the script there and did a really nice job of figuring out a way to pull that one out. Still a long shot to make the tourney. It does feel like Maryland has a little bit better shot.
We're bearing the lead. I think they're the better team.
Maryland is.
Of the 3.
All right. Well, so let's get to them. They have a great win in Illinois. They won at Iowa as well. They go to Michigan State on Saturday. They still have the Illini at home. They still go to Wisconsin. With a defense like theirs, a closer like Jameer Young, there's a lot to like about this Maryland team, the way that it is playing right now.
Because defense can be a difference maker. If you can anchor your defense and say, I can count on keeping this low scoring, and if we can find ways to score, we got a great chance to win.
Right.
Purdue, Minnesota, and Nebraska had their season low of points against Maryland. Overall, in the Big Ten, they've kept teams, down. Michigan State, even though they lost the game, held them, significantly down in the second half, which was a big positive for Maryland. I think that schedule is very favorable. They have a legit shot to sweep Illinois, which will be something on their shelf. I think for sure they got to win their home games.
Right.
So they got to win all these home games. Now, they could get swept by Michigan State if they lose at Michigan State on Saturday. Obviously, that would be a negative. And then when you look at the road games of Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Rutgers, those are the 3 right there. Could you win 2 of the 3? Sure, you could.
Right.
So if you win 2 of those 3, and you've already got road wins at Iowa, right? My memory serves her, at Iowa, and then at Illinois. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it is good. You know, it's interesting because I looked at them and I was looking at those road wins you talked about and was thinking, I think there's a reasonable shot here. And then, you know, I love the metric sites and just to kind of see because I see things through the Big Ten colored glasses. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, statistically, where are they? Bart Torvik has them a 4% chance to make the tournament right now. You look at the bracket matrix, they're in 0 of the brackets. Yes. So, again, like, it's an uphill battle. I think what I look at, and I think what you're saying, too, is, like, when I watch them right now, the way that they're playing, I mean, like, what Deshaun Harris-Smith did the other night, what Jamie Kaiser did the other night, and then that core that they have. I mean, they have one of the great closers in college basketball.
Who, by the way, should have been on the Cousy list as well.
Yes, absolutely. Right now, we've heard a lot about Braden Smith, but I would agree, Jameer Young should be on it as well. You look at that and you say, okay, like, put all of the metrics aside. I get it. It's a huge uphill battle here, and then have to do some crazy stuff. But I don't think it's unreasonable to think that they could do that based on what they look like right now.
Yeah, I think what we could see in a month's time in Minnesota, much like Indiana 2 years ago, I think Maryland potentially could put themselves in position to be in position by winning a couple of games in Minnesota. I mean, they have the personnel, they have the defense on a neutral floor, they have a closer in Young, they've got a post in Reese. They could be that team that gets to Friday or Saturday, or probably would need to get to Saturday, by beating potential tournament teams Thursday and Friday.
That was a chapter in Season on the Brink, you know. We have to get in position to get into position.
I read it so long ago, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. Just it's always stuck with me.
All right.
It's a Bob Knightism. You just dropped.
But do you agree that?
I do. It is time to start thinking about spring sports in the Big Ten. That sounds good. The preseason men's lacrosse poll out today. Johns Hopkins is topping the poll. They're followed by Penn State and Maryland. The Blue Jays and Terps tied for the conference crown last season. Defending national champ Northwestern, by the way, picked first for the women. The regular season kicks off Saturday. You can see Ohio State, Penn State, and Rutgers all in action on Big Ten Plus. We got hoops tonight on our airwaves. A.J. Storr leading the 6th-ranked Badgers to Lincoln for a clash with Keisei Tominaga and the Huskers. Big Ten hoops this very evening, 8:30 Eastern, only on the Big Ten Network and the Fox Sports app. Coverage begins with the tip-off show. That comes your way at 7 Eastern. These two have already played. They played in Madison. The Badgers won by 16. They shot the lights out. Connor Sejan came off the bench. He was a revelation. That got him going a little bit. It frankly wasn't close, but Nebraska is so different in Lincoln, Andy. So what are you watching in this one?
I was there for that game. And
I thought that was you.
Yes, I was there. Yeah. There's no question that they're a completely different team. Home versus road. The crowd's going to be great in Lincoln. We don't know about Juwan Gary. It's still unknown. It's probably going to be a game-time decision according to Nebraska. That obviously could be a factor. I don't know how effective he'll be if he is playing. But Mast, obviously, the way he's been able to score from that position, that's going to be a defensive adjustment for Wisconsin. And Stephen Krall, I mean, he's going to have to sort of come out more. And whether it's Nolan Winter or who's ever, they're going to have to make sure they do not let him find his range, because he went for 34, hit 6 threes, so he's got the ability to do that. Tominaga, Hoiberg, Williams, you know, they've got guys that can put the ball up. So this is going to be a major test for Wisconsin. They cannot look ahead to Sunday.
Right.
If they lose tonight, Sunday's a battle for first place.
Right.
Because then they'll be tied in the loss column. First of 2 games against Purdue. They will match up on the final day of the regular season at Mackey on March 10th. What if I told you that Greg Gard, by the way, is among major conference coaches' 6th active road wins?
That would not surprise me, actually. I mean, maybe a little, but I mean, he's a fabulous coach.
Matt Painter 5, so Big Ten at 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've done well on the road.
They have, yeah. This is a huge game for Nebraska. This is a huge week for Nebraska because they have this game, and then they're at Illinois on Sunday. I'll be calling that game with Robbie Hummel. Like, if you can figure out a way to get one of these, I think you're in really good shape. I mean, if somehow you can win them both, all of a sudden that really elevates where you are in the tourney conversation. To me, where it gets really interesting tonight is exactly what you were talking about, the outside shooting of Nebraska. Wisconsin has not defended the three well in terms of percentage. They're 12th in the Big Ten in opponents' three-point percentage. But what they do really well is they minimize attempts, right? So, and Greg Gard has said, hey, that's what we're more concerned about. We're more concerned about, do we allow people to shoot them than the makes? And so that is, to me, that's the push and pull in this game, because as you say, that's where Nebraska's really good. They have so many players who can spread you out. They're so much better at home than they are on the road in terms of shooting the three. So that's the challenge for Wisconsin. Not so much do you prevent Nebraska from making the ones that they shoot, but more, can you run them off the line and can you minimize the number that they get off?
So that's within the game, and obviously we know they've got the personnel to handle it, whether it's Klesmit, whether it's Blackwell or Storr getting up and down.
Right.
He's been sensational. Obviously Wall and Hepburn are the vets. But I think what also is at stake here for the Badgers is legitimately they can put some distance this week. I'm talking about the week.
Right.
With them and Purdue, if they were to sweep this week, and then, obviously win Sunday against the Boilermakers. That also, we're going to have to start thinking about Wisconsin in 2 weeks' time, because 2 weeks from Saturday is the top 16 reveal.
Yeah.
They're going to be there. Where are they going to be? They could be in the conversation for a 1 seed.
No doubt. I mean, if you win these two games this week, absolutely you're in the conversation for a 1 seed.
So that was unheard of discussion in November and early December.
Yeah.
The fact that they could be in position for a 1 seed. I think at this point, if it was this weekend, they're a lock for a 2.
Yeah.
If the top 16 reveal was this weekend. Obviously, we've got a couple of weeks, but they are trending in the right direction to be in position to have a great run in March Madness.
I'm glad that we footnoted the general twice on this show. It is amazing the job that they've done. And I just think in this day and age, for a team that had a disappointing year like Wisconsin did last year, first of all, to play as well as they did in the NIT, to kind of rally around this tournament that, frankly, Wisconsin had only missed the tournament one time in basically like a quarter of a century.
Yes.
And so now you're back and you're playing the NIT, and you could see people saying,
against a bunch of Conference USA teams, by the way.
Right. And but they played really well. They made it to the Final Four, and then for that group to stay together and to be able to sell AJ Storr on coming in, right? I mean, like, all of that stuff really speaks to Greg Gard. I think there had been some question a couple of years ago about the culture around the program. There's no question about the culture around the program. People don't stay, people don't come unless you've got a great thing going, and he clearly does.
And I would say resiliency also within this season. Right. I was there for the Tennessee loss. They got bullied in that game. Obviously, Tennessee's very good. They lose, they get blitzed at Providence, and they get run out of the building at McHale.
Yeah.
And all that has happened, and now they look like potentially the best team in the Big Ten.
We will find out this week, or at least we'll get a little more information. We will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll discuss it.
More Big Ten today. We'll be right back here. See you then.